Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to be talking about what you need to know if you are creating a parenting plan for your children. So the starting point obviously is, what is a parenting plan? Frankly, the name says it all. It's a plan on parenting your children, and this is usually, a documentation, an agreement entered into between parties that are going through a separation or a divorce, where they detail what they would or how they would like to parent their children. And it covers as much areas as you would like. So it can be as broad as or as narrow as you find appropriate for the circumstances of your children and your family as a whole. So it should generally cover, things like decision-making responsibilities and, parenting time and all of that. You also need to remember the overarching theme here, which is the best interest of your children. So when you are creating a parenting plan, always remember that the best interests of the children matter. And it is, when you say the best interest of the children, it is more than just a cliche. There might be times where the best interest of your child will compete with what you want, for example, in a plan. But if you remember that this plan is for the children, it is not for your convenience, then it would maybe help make creating this documentation between you and your ex a little bit easier. Of course, a lot of times you have to take into consideration your individual circumstances. So, for example, if you're going to be at work, it doesn't make sense for you to have parenting time during hours where you're supposed to be at work. That's not in the best interest of the children either, right? So I do understand that convenience for the parents matter, but where as much as possible, just focus on the children. And, as parents, in a lot of ways, we're used to making sacrifices for our children. So I expect that a lot of people, especially people who are amicably drafting their parenting plans, have the best interests of their children at mind. So I know I'm just preaching to the choir. So let's talk about what are some things that you can include in these plans. So I mentioned earlier decision-making responsibilities. So a starting point at times is what has typically happened while or during the relationship, right? So if one person typically made the decisions and you're content with that, it's okay to include that as in your parenting plan as what should happen. But that doesn't mean it has to be that way. So typically, when parties are in a relationship, you just sort of take on certain roles. But when parties go through a separation, maybe, they want to see a change. Maybe the parent that was less involved in making some decisions now wants to have more of a voice or an opinion on how things should go, especially when it comes to raising the children. And, to play devil's advocate on that note, sometimes when you're in the home and you're living together, the decisions that your partner kind of makes on a day-to-day, while you may not be the one, I shouldn't say day-to-day because that's a different thing, but in terms of big picture decisions, you're together and, there's a certain level of trust. You may have discussions informally and it may turn out that one party does ultimately make the call, but understand that it may not be that same dynamic now that you're separating. And so if the other side now wants to be a little more involved, have a voice in how decisions are made, so long as you trust that they will make decisions in the best interest of the child, then having that involvement of the other parent is a great idea. I put this just to say, think about your circumstances carefully. Think about what works best for the children. A lot of people think the default is joint decision-making responsibilities. And I think that's fantastic to the extent that, two heads can be better than one, having two people, discuss and come up with a decision on how to make any major decisions. And by major decisions, I mean education, religion, extracurricular activities, health. Having two people discuss the decisions on this for the child, the idea is you would make better decisions for the child. So as a general rule, I can see how joint decision-making responsibilities is a great idea. However, it doesn't always work out that way. And an example of where joint decision-making responsibilities might not be the greatest is when you're dealing with parties that just cannot communicate, right? So I'm not even going to talk about how even more difficult this could be when we're dealing with situations of domestic abuse and violence, but just even as simple as just not being able to communicate maturely and, you know, without conflict. If you're not able to do that, then why would you have joint decision making responsibilities if it's going to just create conflict and delay decisions that sometimes may be urgent and critical? As nice as it may be to say you have joint decision making responsibilities, you may want to think about that. But in any case, that's your thought there. Think about what you want to do in terms of decision making responsibilities. Now, as I said, decision making responsibilities, we're thinking big items, you know, things like would the child attend a French immersion school or just a regular English school, you know, religious school or, you know, public school or private school, things like that, right? Do you want your children to be introduced to two separate religions or one religion that you both subscribe to, or do you prefer to just have no religions education for the children, or no religious training or introduction whatsoever, and have the child pick up on what they want to do later in life, even health as well? So you get the picture, but it's big decisions like that I mean by decision-making responsibilities. That differs completely from day-to-day decisions. So day-to-day decisions are, you know, does the child have pizza or, you know, chicken fingers, for example, for dinner? So things like that. You know, do you take the child out for a walk or do you have them play video games? As a general rule, day-to-day decisions are made by the parent that has parenting time. So if you have a schedule where the children are with you one day and with the other parent the next day, the way the law is designed is during the time the child is with you, you make the decisions that are the best for the child at that moment, separate and apart, obviously, from big decisions. So day-to-day decisions just flows with parenting time. So parenting time is one that you want to spend a lot of time thinking about. You want to think about your child's age, for example. So for younger children, I mean, these are all social science studies that, you know, we lawyers are trying to get aboard with. And, you know, again, thinking about the best interests of the child. So while it may be more convenient, for example, to have a week on, week off parenting arrangement, the studies have found that with children that are younger, that may not be the best plan, and it's not ideal for them to go for longer periods of time without seeing the other parent. So maybe you want to consider 2 days in one home and a couple of days at the other, whatever again works for the stage that your child is in. Recognizing that, you know, what may work perfectly now may change as the child grows and evolves, right? The needs of a 4-year-old child is completely different from that of a 14-year-old, for example. So you want to consider that when you're thinking of parenting time. This might be where you also want to consider your work schedule. If there's no point negotiating a 5 p.m. Start time for parenting if you leave work at 5 and you're unable to pick up the children for your parenting time. Now, there are ways around it. If you have help, of course, and you have someone that can help pick up the children for your parenting time, then absolutely. If the children, for example, are going to daycare or after school programs, that should also not be a problem. So those are sort of some considerations you have to put in mind. Otherwise, it might be better to just say, okay, let's have a start time that's a little bit later to allow for that travel time. Parents like to have weekend. I have seen parents create plans where, you know, the children are with one parent all throughout the week and with another parent on the weekends. If that's what works for your family situation, that's fantastic. But I've found that for a lot of parents, they want that weekend time. And I've also heard the pushback on that. Someone saying, well, but, you know, he had the children all week, I should have the weekends. again, makes sense from their perspective because the week is 5 days and they're only asking for 2. But what the courts have found is weekday parenting time, especially for children that are school age, is not the same as weekends. So the weekends, it's more fun. Everyone's more relaxed. During the week, it's more go, go, go. So it's been found that it's appropriate for, parents to share weekend parenting time so that both parents can have that opportunity to engage in fun activities with the children. So staying on the issue of parenting time as well, you want to pay attention to the holidays. Now, I'm going to backtrack a minute because for some people, they don't even need a schedule. Some people are amicable enough to create a parenting plan that is just generous and flexible, where, you decide on a day-to-day if you want the child, if, when you want parenting time to happen, if it's possible, not, and it works for some people. Few people, I would say, can pull that off, but it does work for some people. So you don't necessarily have to have a fixed schedule if you're one of those people who are lucky enough to work on a flexible parenting schedule. In that case, obviously, you want to make it clear where are the children residing primarily. So they're living primarily with ex-parent, and the other parent can have parenting time as they please. And so the other thing you need to think about when you're thinking parenting time is regular parenting time is different from holiday parenting time. So when we're thinking holidays, where it includes things like school holidays for school-age children, we're also thinking things like, all the long weekends, for example. So those are holidays, and then the classic, Christmas holidays as well. Aside from those are sort of the more secular ones, there are religious holidays that are important to some parents or both, if you're religious, and there are also cultural holidays which may not technically be holidays on the national calendar, but these are important dates that matter to one or both parties. And so be mindful when you're creating your schedule to include these holiday parenting considerations. You don't want a situation where on a date that matters to you, the other side has parenting time and is maybe not being flexible, and now you're unable to spend that special day or occasion with your child. And it's usually something as simple as, putting in the agreement that holiday parenting time will override the regular parenting time. So that would ensure that, those special days are sort of covered. So do think about including that in your agreement. Then you also want to consider things like pick up and drop offs, right? For a lot of people, they're able to pick up the children from the other person's home. But for some people, that's a disaster. So pickups have been arranged from various places, from coffee shops to in some cases in the front of a police station. And there's been extreme cases where parties actually have to go into the police station to have these exchanges happen. Needless to say, I am not a fan of having pick-up and drop-offs at police stations, whether in front or on the inside, because I think it sends a wrong message to the child. But at the end of the day, you are where you are. If that's the only thing that's the best thing for your situation, that's, whether it's for protection purposes, to avoid conflict, whatever it is, again, keeping in mind the best interest of the child. If that's the best option available to you, then do that. There's even cases where, people have involved third parties to facilitate pickups and drop-offs as well, to reduce conflict and just, protect children from all of these adult conflicts that can arise when you're going through a separation. So you're going to think about pick up and drop off location and pick up and drop off times. So that goes without saying. It's important for you to have a time. You might want to put in there how long you would wait, because if it's in your home, it may not matter as much. You're at home, child's there, except obviously you're trying to leave home to get somewhere, then you don't want the other side to be late. But it's even more important if you're sitting in the parking lot somewhere waiting for parenting time exchange to happen. and the other party doesn't show up. So you might want to put in your agreement that if they don't show up within 15 minutes, it's okay for you to leave, and you would assume that parenting time isn't happening, so that it's important to respect everyone's time. It's also great for the children as well, because consistency is important. If a child is excited about going to see the other parent during their parenting time, the last thing you want to do is have this excited or anxious child in the car with you, waiting for hours on end and not sure if the other party would show up. So that's something that you may want to consider. You also want to consider how the child would be transported. So in some cases where it's exchanges are done in a public location, it's usually one person pulls up, takes the child's exchange. It's usually more straightforward. But where pick up and drop offs are happening at the other person's homes, you might want to clarify that you pick up from my home and I'll pick up the child from your home. Or in some cases it might be one person doing the pick up and drop off. Again, there's no having fast rules here. It's whatever works for your situation. In some cases I've seen people who have agreed that only one person does all the driving, even though it's a long drive, because they chose to move. I have also seen orders where courts have asked one party to drive, and we're talking about significant distances, so where parents are living several cities apart, and I've had a court order that the parties meet at a particular en route halfway, at the halfway point from one parent's house to the other to facilitate exchanges there. It helps with drive time, helps increase the amount of parenting time the other parent has as well, so they don't spend all of their time driving. So that's something for you to consider when you're drafting your plan. You may also want to consider if restricting moves is an appropriate option for you. So I talked about, the multi-city moves. It may or may not be a big deal in your situation. It may or may not even be applicable, but put your mind to it. If you have concerns that the other parent may move, then you might want to address what happens. It may be in your agreement, you say, well, if you're just moving within 5 kilometers or within 20 kilometers it's always good to put a location from which the comparison or the distance would be calculated. So, sometimes people just say live within the GTA. Well, the GTA is pretty large, and, it could span multiple cities and could be confusing. What if one person thinks, Hamilton is part of the GTA, and someone could say, well, we didn't say the GTHA, you know what I mean? So clarity is always important in every agreement. So if my style is always to choose a point. So if it's from the previous matrimonial home or from the child's school, and use that as a starting point to determine whether you want to restrict the distance within which parents can move, and one or both, because again, a move by either parent could significantly affect parenting time. So that's something to think of. If that's not a concern for you at all, that is fine. It's not disastrous for your agreement to be silent on that point. The law makes it clear that if you're going to relocate or make a move that will significantly impact the other person's parenting time, that, there are notice requirements and there are forms that you need to file and all of that. So that's no big deal if that's not a concern at this time. And then, I think those are sort of the very big items. But if you want to get into a lot of details, you could go into details around when new partners can be introduced to the children. Do the parents want to talk about this first, or do they, before the children are actually informed about that? Travel is a big one. You want to make sure that it is clear what you want to do when that happens. If there's notice requirements necessary, or if you need travel consent and all of that, you want to make sure that that is something that's included in the agreement. So if notice can be given within 30 days, 60 days, whatever the case may be, it's would be great to put that in there. Obviously, if it's out of country, it's advisable for you to have a travel consent, and you can put in your agreement that the other side will cooperate in signing those. So you can also talk about, school, for example. If there's a field trip for school, will both parents attend, or would one person attend, or do you alternate attendance? Parent teachers meeting, the same would apply. Even details as car seats, for example, ensuring there's proper car seats in place for the children. If one parent does not drive, for example, then if there's concerns about how the children would be picked up, you need to address those. Or there's parents who have had issues with driving under the influence, and you might want to make it clear in your agreement that it's not allowed. I'm sure we would all expect that everyone knows that they should not drive under the influence, much more when they're with children. But a reminder has never hurt anyone, so you might as well do that. Social media is one that's getting more and more prevalent these days. Make sure that you both have an agreement on how you want that to work out, because some parents have no problem sharing every detail about their children on social media. And who does not love to see adorable posts about children? Well, some parents don't. So the other parent may not want to have their children on social media at all. So you might want to talk about that and, see where you stand. So could it be you both want to approve on pictures that are posted first, or if it's a complete media blackout, do not post anything type of situation. So as you can see, your parenting plan, again, is essentially a plan on how you would raise your children going forward now that you're going through the separation or divorce, and you can have it as detailed. I've only thrown some examples out there. There's as much detail, again, as required to work for this plan, to work for your family, and especially for the children. That is what you need to put in there. If you're fortunate enough to just want to have a high level arrangement, and you're confident that both parents can walk through the details, then leave it, just on a high level without so much details. Just, again, think about best interest of the child, think about clarity, and make sure that once you have those thoughts in mind, do I have an agreement that's clear and easy for us to understand? And am I thinking in the best interest of our children when we're creating this? Then, I think you should be fine. And if amendments need to be made, if you're thinking about the best interest of the children, it shouldn't be that much of a struggle. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more informative content. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.